kill
Mhm.
innocent women and children for nothing. That is what we identify terrorism with.
Tagore was against nationalism, blind nationalism. Tagore and Gandhi are on the opposite sides. What are your views on this?
Of the caste system or the sati system, or
Mm-hmm.
having widows being sent to Varanasi, or
Mm-hmm.
having them fast throughout the day. Tagore had himself walked out of the structured education system. He was
Hmm.
enrolled in
Really?
college. Yeah. He went to college only for one day. Today, our children don't have that breathing space. Of course, the British are giving you institutions, but you can walk into that institution to educate yourself only when you keep your head down. But
Mhm.
he
Right.
was a person who was a trendsetter.
What is the most painful thing Tagore wrote? We are going to give away a copy of your book. Okay. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to Exploring Personalities. So, how are you?
I'm great, Ankit. Thank you so much for having me here today. And how are you?
I am absolutely fine, and being in presence of you, it is making the day more lovely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, in today's podcast, we'll try to cover Rabindranath Tagore's life from very beginning to end. Although a personality like him cannot be covered in an hour, right? But we'll try to touch as much as possible, right? So, the very first question would be, what drew you to Tagore? Like, why did you start writing about him? Why did you write a book about him?
Well, to be very honest, Ankit, I had never really thought about translating Tagore.
Okay.
You see, because it's a mammoth task,
Mm-hmm.
and I hold Tagore in such high esteem that to even touch his works,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, mm, it requires a lot of introspection, a lot of reading, and really questioning oneself that
Mm-hmm.
do I even have the capability of doing it? Well, it was Dipankar from
Mm-hmm.
Readomania, Dipankar and
Okay.
Indrani, of course.
Okay.
So they proposed it to me, and I said yes. Perhaps at that point of time, I wasn't even thinking. I
Okay.
was very excited.
Okay.
You see, because even an opportunity like this is very
Uh-huh.
hard to come by.
Of
So
course, of
once
course.
I said yes, so I said yes, and then I got the book, the
Mhm,
short stories book
mhm,
of Tagore,
mhm,
Golpo
mhm.
Guccio, it's called in Bengali.
Okay.
It is only then that it kind of sank in that, oh God, I mean, it's a huge task.
Mhm.
So Indrani really helped me a lot to close in on which stories we should cover.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
we did 10 of the best known
Okay.
short stories.
Mhm.
So now, before that, I must tell you one thing that me, like many other Bengalis
Mhm.
across the globe, particularly in West Bengal, we have
Mhm.
grown up with Tagore being a part of our extended family.
Right. Right.
There would not be a home where he hasn't been read. Children recite poems, Rabindra
Mhm.
Jayanti is celebrated. It will be celebrated in another few days. So, and now it's not only a Bengali thing, it's a
Mhm.
global
Right.
event happening.
Right.
So in our childhood, on Sundays we would have the record player on. I
Mhm.
remember that when I was in class 2 or 3, we got our first tape recorder.
Okay.
And even there, we recited Tagore poems,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? And sang songs, the cassettes that we used to have.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
even when we were welcoming a new gadget into the family, Tagore was a part of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So once I delved into the short stories, And
Mm-hmm.
I discovered the wealth of emotions, the
Okay.
wealth of language.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you seldom find both of them together in a literary
Mm-hmm.
piece.
For sure. Right.
Right, unless the writer is really
Mm-hmm.
great. There
Mm-hmm.
might be excellent language, but it may be lacking in emotion.
For
But
sure. Right.
Tagore and Shakespeare, they have both.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, when I began my job of translation, I would say it was the wealth of emotions and language
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that really
Right.
inspired me to continue to do it, because it took a very long time, because
Mm.
the Bengali language has changed.
Right.
Right, a century has passed, but I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed every moment of it.
Okay, okay. I can relate to, many things you have said because currently I live in Jaipur, but I was born in West Bengal. So I know the
Oh,
glories of, yeah. So I know the glories of Rabindranath Tagore, of Rabindra Jayanti. Every year we used to celebrate it at our school, and the day used to be, surreal actually. You cannot explain it in
surreal.
words. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
now when we talk about Tagore, we cannot miss that point where he returned his knighthood. The story, the horrific story of Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Tagore renounced his knighthood as an act of protest. What does that tell about his personality? Would you like to add something?
Yes, his personality was unique. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this context, what is important is for us to realize that he identified it as an act of terrorism.
Okay.
You see, and he protested
Mm-hmm.
because we all know that the British were in power. They
For
were
sure.
superior
Right.
to us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, as far as authority was concerned. They had the
Mm-hmm.
authority, we did not have the authority.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when someone in a position of power, someone who's superior to you,
Mm-hmm.
tries to frighten you by
Mm-hmm.
doing such mindless things,
Mm-hmm.
it really means that that person is scared.
Right.
That,
Okay.
my inferior is rising up to the occasion. Perhaps my
Mm-hmm.
days are numbered.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Tagore had that insight,
Okay.
to realize that it was not just something that they just wanted to do to teach us a lesson or something like that. They could
Mm-hmm.
have done anything else,
Mm-hmm.
because the law, the power was in their hands, right?
Okay.
Now what they did was an act of terrorism. When you kill
Mm.
innocent women and children for nothing, that is what we identify terrorism with.
Right.
Right. And I think he made a very strong statement against the
Mm-hmm.
British authorities indulging in such acts of terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it needs a lot of power to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right. Right.
Right. When you belong to a country that has been subjugated
Mm-hmm.
and you're given a knighthood
Mm-hmm.
and then you're renouncing it,
Mm-hmm.
he knew very well that he was putting himself in a position where anything might have happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
would become vulnerable, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
he
Right.
was a person who was a trendsetter.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely he wanted to set a trend.
Right.
That why, should I accept your reward if you do not
Mm-hmm.
give my people the basic right to live?
For sure. Right.
Honoring me comes much later.
Mm-hmm.
Why should we, accept your honors
Mm-hmm.
if we are having to accept your barbaric acts? We are not being able to do anything in return. So this
Mm-hmm.
was a huge statement, a very non-violent, and I think a very non-political
Mm-hmm.
and unbiased
Mm-hmm.
statement that he made.
Wow.
which is I also think that at the diplomatic level,
Mm-hmm.
it was also a very powerful statement, something that we should learn from.
Wow. Okay. Were there repercussions
Right?
because of what he did?
No, but there were no repercussions as such on Tagore
Mm-hmm.
because,
Mm-hmm.
see, Tagore already had that platform where if he renounces the knighthood,
Mm-hmm.
the entire nation wakes up to it and
Wow. Right.
applauds him. And perhaps that was his way of spreading nationalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right, that look, I have done it, I have taken a
Mm-hmm.
stand, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
your turn to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because before that, in history, we have seen how the British would, go about scattering these Rai Bahadur titles to people in Bengal. I mean, both
Mm-hmm.
East and West Bengal, when there was no divide between the two.
Right.
Right. So, hitherto, before that, nobody had really thought of returning it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because nowadays we have seen that, when women are awarded a prize
Mm-hmm.
and, they
Mm-hmm.
find that somebody who has been, a perpetrator in the Me Too movement,
Mm-hmm.
they don't go
Mm-hmm.
to accept the prize. Right.
Right.
Right. So it was that kind of a statement.
Mm-hmm.
But that was being made for the first time. So I
Wow.
think that, only a person of his caliber can do it.
For sure, I agree because today even people are not able to give back certificates that do not have even so they have so less value, and he renounced the knighthood, an honorary title of such level. It takes a man like Tagore to do that.
Absolutely. See, his CV didn't matter to him.
Right. For sure, for sure. Also, I when I was reading about Tagore, I came across this thing that Tagore was against nationalism, blind nationalism, blind patriotism. He felt that just replacing the British flag and putting Indian flag there won't do the thing unless you change the system. Do you agree with that? What are your views?
See, Tagore's views on nationalism were never really political.
Okay.
Right. So he thought from the point of view of an intellectual.
hmm Okay.
So an intellectual's point of view will always be different.
hmm
Right. And I think his views on nationalism were more global.
Okay.
What he wanted Indians to do is to unite themselves and present themselves as a unified whole,
Okay.
despite the cultural diversities that we have.
Okay.
To present themselves as a unified whole to the entire
hmm
world. Something that was not being done because we were a colony. When
Okay.
you're a colony and you are being exploited, every aspect of your existence is being exploited. It's, if you look at it from the point of view of progress, of course, the British are giving you institutions,
hmm
right? But you can walk into that institution to educate yourself only when you keep your head down.
Hmm.
Right. And then in under those circumstances, you are very scared to exhibit your full potential as an Indian, your
Hmm.
cultural ethnicity.
hmm
Right, today we have seen that even in the United States or UK, Diwali is celebrated. They do Garba,
Right.
Navratri is celebrated, and all
Right.
those things. Living in
Right.
our country, we were not being able to project this fact that this is what India is. India
hmm
is a unified whole
hmm
where, despite these rich cultures that we have, the
mhm,
different art forms, languages,
mhm,
dance
mhm,
forms, food,
mhm, mhm.
clothing, everything is there. But we are
Right.
not being able to
Mhm.
exploit our potential because we are being exploited by another country.
Right.
And that is also a very strong nationalistic statement, only it's not political.
Mhm.
Right, but in the long run, it definitely helps.
Right.
Right, and there was a spiritual aspect to it also. And I think
Okay.
at that point of time, we needed Tagore's poetry and Tagore's literature
Mhm.
because ultimately, it projected social patterns.
Mhm.
He set trends through his literature.
Mhm.
We got to
Mhm.
know which are the aspects of social
Mhm.
life we need to think
Mhm.
about, like
Mhm.
women's education or widow remarriage, or not marrying off girls at a very young age. Right, so to me, everything that contributes to the society coming together as a whole and
Mhm.
presenting themselves to the rest of the world can also be called nationalism. Of course, it is not aggressive.
Mhm.
It's not something like you do as a form of protest.
Right. Okay.
Right, it is something that you build upon constantly on a daily basis
Mhm.
and keep your intellectual aspect, your intellectual identity, your cultural
Mhm.
identity alive.
Mm.
So
Got it.
that is a beautiful form of nationalism, and
Mhm.
I think it's the most non aggressive.
Mhm.
So I would definitely salute him for that.
Amazing. Right. Definitely. Also when we talk about nationalism, there is this name, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. You cannot ignore that guy. Okay. So I would like to talk about, I'll come up on poetries and stories, of course. That is a very big part of Tagoreji's life, but a little bit more on nationalism. Now, Tagore and Gandhi, two brutal forces. Okay. They admired each other, but they were also against each other's ideologies at different times. Because, for example, there was this earthquake in Bihar, and Gandhi called it divine punishment, but Tagore disagreed. So there are many instances where Tagore and Gandhi are on the opposite sides. What are your views on this?
It's very interesting, actually,
Hmm. Hmm.
because you have these huge personalities and each voice is so strong
Hmm.
and so prominent.
Hmm.
But at the end of it, I would say that they are just two sides of the same coin.
Okay, okay.
And they are just two different paths
Uh-huh.
with the same goal and reaching the same destination. Ultimately,
Hmm. Hmm.
what Gandhi did was at the grassroots level,
Okay.
which was also very important,
Hmm.
right? And it was a nationwide movement.
Hmm.
What he did was, I mean, more than commendable because he reached out to the masses,
Hmm.
to the so called quote unquote untouchables,
Hmm.
right? So he debunked the caste system.
Hmm.
You will be surprised to know that even Tagore,
Hmm.
in his early days, he used to visit villages in Bengal and he was
Okay.
sent there by his family to collect taxes because they were
Okay.
zamindars.
Hmm.
So he would mingle with the villagers and very often he would just excuse the taxes.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm. So, as I said, they were just two different people, perhaps speaking a different language, but with the same
Hmm.
goal in mind. I mean,
Hmm.
what Gandhi did, Tagore would not do. Tagore would not go out there and lead a march or, throw
Hmm.
British things into a burning fire.
Hmm.
Right. So I think great personalities respect each other so much that they give a lot of room to the other person.
Mm.
And, mentally they think that you do your thing and I will do mine as long as
Wow.
it helps our people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So, would he have called Gandhi Mahatma if he had not realized what Gandhiji was doing? Would
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, channelize all the human resources that we had
Mm-hmm.
to free us.
Mm-hmm.
And on the
Right.
other hand, Tagore was trying to unify us with his literature,
Mm-hmm.
and of course through the Brahmo Samaj, he
Mm-hmm.
was trying to uh, open our eyes to the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and if you ask the same question to a person living abroad,
Mm-hmm.
right, they would perhaps tell you that both figures were so
Mm-hmm.
important in the Indian national movement. We could not have done without them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So while Gandhi's movement was very inclusive, a nationwide mass movement, see, he had that magnetism.
Mm-hmm.
Through his simplicity and through his sacrifice,
Okay.
and he did things that even we are trying to do today, right? We are trying,
Mm-hmm.
even our present government is trying to tell us that purchase
Mm-hmm.
Indian goods,
Mm-hmm. Right.
produce your own goods.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that was the message that Gandhiji was giving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas Rabindranath was reaching out to the social construct,
Mm-hmm.
saying that, unless society is such that enables this progress,
Mm-hmm.
then how will you be honored by
Right.
other countries?
Definitely. Definitely. Like you told, no, paths are different, but the destination is the same.
Absolutely. So I feel they superbly complemented one another.
Definitely. I loved that you told, no, that personalities of that magnitude, they always leave a room for growth, for acceptance, because when a person becomes very rigid with the self, there is no room to grow, because then he will feel that whatever I say is the ultimate truth.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, coming to the literature part, okay, a very important part of Tagore, and you wrote stories about him. So, if I were to ask you, what is the most painful thing Tagore wrote? And what would he be going through? Because you yourself, as a writer, you would have to go into that state and write or translate his stories. So, what would be the most painful thing Tagore wrote?
The most painful thing I think he wrote was a short story where, the girl
Mm-hmm.
dies because she was not treated well by her in laws. Of course, that story is not there in my book, but it is a very personal experience for Tagore because one of his daughters got married
Mm-hmm.
into such a family where, a person like Rabindranath Tagore's stature, he was not allowed to meet her. When he would go to meet her, he would be made to sit in the corridor and wait for hours. But she would not be allowed to come down to meet him. And eventually, she died. So it must have been very painful because he wrote a story with a very
Mm-hmm.
similar character who dies in the end. But imagine the mental strength of the person because even there, he was trying to make a statement that don't get your girls married at all,
Mm-hmm.
but don't get them
Okay.
married into such families where you have to
Wow.
pay a hefty dowry or where your daughter is tortured.
Mm-hmm.
See, because 100 years have passed, but even now such things happen. And I would urge everyone to read Tagore because you will be inspired to write your own stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because you hear of such things, you read about such incidents in the newspaper, Ankit.
Mm-hmm.
So we as writers, we have a responsibility to show them.
Mm-hmm.
You see, our laws have evolved. There are
Right.
many new laws which
Mm-hmm.
speak up for women. So
Mm-hmm.
if Tagore had the courage to do that,
Mm-hmm.
then why not us?
Definitely.
It's not a
Definitely.
thing really about men writers or women writers, because Tagore was a
Mm-hmm.
man himself. Emotions are universal.
Wow. Right.
In my book, in fact, there is a story called The Skeleton, where there is a
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
beautiful girl who has been widowed at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And she falls in love with someone, but because it was such a social taboo that the love is ultimately it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I'm not telling you what happens because readers might like to read it. So she doesn't really get what she wants, but why?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But why? You see, because today I can imagine any young person, young or old, to read it and ask this question, that why didn't she
Mm-hmm.
just go ahead and marry him? Or why didn't
Mm-hmm.
he propose
Mm-hmm.
marriage to her?
Mm-hmm.
So you see, Rabindranath Tagore in his days had the courage to even
Mm-hmm.
show a
Mm-hmm.
young widowed girl who is in love with an
Mm-hmm.
unmarried man needed a lot
Mm-hmm.
of courage.
Mm. Wow.
So I think what he went through as a father must
Mm-hmm.
have encouraged him, and that I find really painful. It
Mm.
must have really needed a lot of courage to come out of the grieving that he was going through and then, try to bring about social reforms.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, once again, speaks of his greatness.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. While you were talking about this, I came to understand that at a time like that, when Tagore was alive and when he was writing poetries and stories, it must have been a difficult time, especially for the women. Women were not given very high positions, were not treated as equal as men. But Tagore decided to write about them. Would he have faced any issues with that? Because he was treating women as equal, also glamorizing them, also keeping them at high standards, talking about them, talking about their problems, talking about whatever they have to go through because of men. So, what would that have been like? How does that courage come from?
See, once again, I would say that I wouldn't really say that he had invited controversies,
Hmm.
right? But
Okay.
there must have been a certain section of society who were not very happy,
Hmm.
or who would have probably criticized him for
Hmm.
his very modern opinions.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then again, you see the Tagore family having played such a huge role in the Bengal Renaissance.
Hmm.
They were trendsetters, and at that point of
Hmm.
time, I think Bengal had already had enough of the caste system and women being exploited, and the emergence of the Brahmo Samaj, of which
Hmm.
Rabindranath Tagore's family was a part. So they began to make their presence felt in a very strong way, and I think Bengal was ready for the change.
Hmm. Okay.
Right, because there were
Hmm.
so many leaders speaking up for social changes. There was,
Hmm.
Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Swami Vivekananda, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Ram Mohan Roy. So, through all that was happening
Hmm.
in the social front, people were writing. so many novels. They were all not about nationalism. A
Mm-hmm.
lot was being written about social reforms.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think he was more welcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
His opinions were welcomed rather than criticized.
Wow.
We also have Brahmo women,
Mm-hmm.
of his family setting trends like,
Mm-hmm.
the way the sari was being worn, or,
Mm-hmm.
the designs of blouses,
Mm-hmm.
recipes, cooking
Mm-hmm.
Western things,
Okay.
or, women traveling abroad
Mm-hmm.
for education, all started around the same time.
Right.
Right. So, without having a person like Tagore who was showing people that this is how you do it, it's simple. I am
Mm-hmm.
writing it, read it, and all
Mm-hmm.
that you have to do is to implement it.
Wow.
Right. So, I think it came as a very huge wave. He
Mm-hmm.
created a very huge wave that swept along, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the entire, I wouldn't just say Bengal, the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think the voices of criticism would have been, too shallow. Society
Mm-hmm.
had already woken up to the shallowness, of the caste system or the sati system, or,
Mm-hmm.
having widows being sent to Varanasi, or
Mm-hmm.
having them fast throughout the day. Society can accept these things up to a certain level, and
Mm-hmm.
then there is bound to be a change. We have seen changes happening in all civilizations across the
Mm-hmm.
globe.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So, and I would salute Tagore more because of the fact that he could analyze a woman's mind. I wouldn't really say analyze, I would say read
Mm-hmm.
a woman's mind, her heart.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think more than the mind, what he could read was the heart.
Right.
You see, so you can imagine, Ankit, if an entire generation of women in
Mm-hmm.
Bengal were reading, and if you
Uh-huh.
identify with any one or more of those characters,
Mm-hmm.
right, then how much damage can a bit of criticism or controversy do?
Sure, for
Not
sure, for
much.
sure. Right, right. Completely agree. Because we are going to give away a copy of your book. Okay. I
Okay.
would I would ask this question, and I think from today on, whenever I invite an author to my podcast, I would ask this question. What is the best way to read a book? If you can answer that in brief, what is the best way to read a book?
All right. See, for me, reading a book needs involvement.
Okay, wow. Okay.
When I was a student in school, I was an avid reader.
Okay.
And in fact, I used to read so many storybooks that my mother would tell me that, it's time, annual exams are here, you need to sit and revise your syllabus. But we would fall on deaf ears, her words.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you see my living room, my bedroom, they are still stacked with books.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, reading is never really casual,
Mm.
because I really need to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
First, I would say in the subject matter.
Okay.
All right, the genre, that I
Okay.
like to read different kinds of books.
Mm-hmm.
I like to read fiction, non fiction, romantic books, thrillers, all kinds. But it needs to be a genre that I like. And then, once that I have liked the subject matter, I need to get involved with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is very difficult to get involved in a book where the
Mm-hmm.
characters don't come alive or where the characters are half baked.
Right.
For example, let's take Ruskin Bond.
Okay.
All right, though this is a conversation on Tagore primarily, but I find a connection because very much like Tagore, Ruskin Bond writes about everyday life in very simple language with very human characters with whom you can relate. Right. So that thing needs to be present. That, do I find such characters around me? Are they relatable? And how do these characters appeal to me? Right. So, because I get very emotionally involved when I'm reading, I just imagine the characters in front of me. Like it happened when I was reading Gone with the Wind in class 8. So they need to come alive, and they need to be something that, even when I shut the book, I can hear the conversations in my mind. I
Right.
am conversing with the characters, probably thinking of alternative endings.
I hear you, definitely.
Right, so that involvement really needs to be there, otherwise it will fail to interest me.
Wow, that is such an amazing advice. I think every reader would relate to it and would, because whenever I read, I'll tell you my story. Okay, I sit with a pen, with a highlighter, and sometimes even a copy where I can write notes. So my book reading is very messy. I have highlighted words, I have notes, I have my own story, my questions, that if I get a chance to sit with an author like you, then maybe I'll put out that questions. Okay, so my book looks messy, but there are other people's whose book looks very neat. Every page is like very crisp. Not a single pencil is allowed to touch the page. Right.
Right. See, in that case, I would say that your way of reading, Ankit, has a lot of involvement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
When, but if you are just trying to keep that book clean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
different thing altogether.
Uh-huh.
You see, because when you become involved with the characters, then you
Mm-hmm.
don't even have a lunch break in between, because then you'll be
Right.
eating and reading the book. So
Right.
there'll be, all kinds of marks on your book.
Uh-huh. Right. For sure. For sure. Yeah. Now we have talked about writing. Okay. What I feel, when a person cannot express his or her emotions through words, then he writes. If he cannot vocalize them, then he writes. But there is a level even more deep than that. When a person cannot write, he paints. The emotions which he cannot write, he portrays it in a beautiful painting, he or she. So Tagore started painting in 60s. Okay, so what might have inspired him at that age to paint something that he could not write? Because he was already writing. If it was only about writing the emotions, he would have just stopped at writing. But he chose to paint. Why did Tagore choose to paint?
Initially, what he would do is wherever he was scratching out a word while writing prose or poetry,
Hmm.
he began to make patterns out of them.
Okay.
Right. For example, he was writing a page, and wherever he had scratched out something, he would just connect those scratches.
Okay. Wow.
And and he discovered that it was becoming a kind of a pattern or a doodle, as we call
Uh-huh.
it today.
Right.
And
Okay.
from there, he thought that then why not draw?
Hmm.
And once he began to draw, then he said, why not paint? So, you know, Ankit, Tagore began to paint with the joy of a child.
Wow.
Right? He wanted to discover
Hmm.
two things, I think. He wanted to discover the world of drawing and painting,
Hmm.
right? And the joy that it would give him because it was a creative form and he
Hmm.
was a creative genius.
Hmm.
Another thing is that he wanted to see how much of a painter he had in him, because initially he was very dissatisfied with what he was
Hmm.
doing,
Hmm.
right? And he would even throw it away.
Hmm.
So he gave himself the time and waited for, that level of creativity to come when he could actually create something beautiful.
Wow.
Uh,
Right.
his paintings are very abstract
Right.
and very mysterious. At least that's what I think. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, people are very welcome to differ, have their own opinion. But to me, when I have looked at his paintings, I feel that there is a lot that he communicates through them,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a lot that stays behind in his mind.
Wow.
So there is a kind of mystery
Mm-hmm.
over there. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel that the mystery is there because Tagore has not yet had a revelation to himself that who is he? Where does he belong as a painter?
Wow. This is amazing. I'm loving it. Yeah. Continue.
Right. So when you look at his paintings now, Ankit, I think even you can ask yourself the question that is this the whole picture?
Uh-huh.
Or, if Tagore had a few more years to live, would he have
Uh-huh.
painted this in a different way? Like, we have
Mm-hmm.
filmmakers who have seen
Mm-hmm.
their own films 20 years after
Mm-hmm.
they had directed that film, and they've said that, no, I didn't do a good job, I would have done it better.
Right.
Right, and we have a lot of influences in his painting from Western painters, our very own Indian painters. He had so many of them in Shantiniketan
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so his paintings are, of course, beautiful, but
Mm-hmm.
his language, the language of his painting is very different from
Mm-hmm.
his poetic language or his theatrical language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, beautiful. Like you were talking about Tagore being a mysterious man. Okay, I completely agree because it's like जो iceberg होता है, it's the only the tip is visible, right? The below part, it's still
Absolutely.
still out there to explore. Okay, so while you were
Absolutely.
researching for the book you wrote, the World of Tagore, the short story collection, you must have come across facts that I believe people do not know much about. Like Tagore has written over 2,000 songs, has painted over
Correct.
3,000 artworks, has written the national anthems of India, Bangladesh, and inspired Sri Lanka's national anthem as well. So, did you find something about Tagore that most Indians do not know about?
Well, I would here, like to point out the fact that Tagore was very spiritual.
Okay.
Maybe not a mystic in the sense that Ramakrishna was or
Ramakrishna, right.
Swami Vivekananda was, but the level of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
in his works were immense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had read a few of his poems. I had heard his songs when I was a student in school or college. But
Mm-hmm.
now, when I go back to them, there are entire categories or groups of songs or poems that he had written on spirituality.
Okay.
Right. So I didn't use the word spiritualism because he never really had his own ideology of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
spirituality, but the poems are so spiritual that
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel that through the immense pain that Tagore went through,
Mm-hmm.
from losing his near and dear ones, that he took to the spiritual path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first thing that strikes you when you walk into Vishwa Bharati, Shantiniketan, the premises is the prayer room.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and these beautiful songs that explores God, where
Right.
Tagore becomes one with God. He
Mhm,
unites with God.
mhm,
This is the, I would say, the path that is usually followed by mystics is that,
mhm,
oh God, show me who you are, show me where you are, and let me belong to you. Let
Mm-hmm.
me merge with you.
Mm-hmm.
That is there in Tagore.
Wow. Again, the path is different, the destination is the same.
Absolutely. So
Right.
Tagore as a mystic, I think that really needs to be explored a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going through his songs and his poems, he writes about everything. He writes about love, he writes about nature, but he
Mm-hmm.
writes so much about his bonding with God.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So those, pieces of literature are really beautiful.
Wow. Maybe this is the reason why many spiritual leaders of that time were connected to Tagore ji. They were in close connection to him. I have also, if I'm right, I was reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi. There was discussion about Shantiniketan there as well. I have seen the works of Gandhi ji. There are talks about Shantiniketan there as well. So now let's come to Shantiniketan. Okay, if we'll compare the education system of that time and today, what is the difference between Shantiniketan of Rabindranath Tagore and the education system going on in India today?
Don't even get me started. I remember I was in college when I first visited Shantiniketan. I didn't
Okay.
want to come back.
Wow.
You know, whatever 1 or 2 years I had put in here, I
Mm-hmm.
told my parents that, let's forget about it and you admit me here.
Okay.
Because the first thing that we saw when we entered the campus, was that a little group of children were coming, and, they were very, very beautiful yellow
Okay.
clothes, and they were coming out with their books along with the teacher, and they would sit under a tree and learn.
Wow.
All right, and there was some sort of a festival going on, and there were students from the art section of the university who were sitting on the road, and they
Mm-hmm.
were painting these huge canvases.
Amazing. Wow.
So you see, the focal point is the lack of freedom.
Mm.
When you conceptualize a university where children will get an opportunity to learn, remaining
Mm-hmm.
as close to nature as possible,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where they are going to learn through their practical experiences more
Right.
than rote learning. They will learn from
Mm-hmm.
their experiences,
Mm-hmm.
experiments,
Mm-hmm.
through conversation. All right, so and reading will be a lot beyond the textbook.
Definitely. Wow. Right.
Right. So this beyond the textbook knowledge is what you really need in the present
Mm-hmm.
education system.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. But when you have such an exam oriented system,
Mm-hmm.
then you are sort of restricting children from reading further, reading beyond.
Mm-hmm. Right. Completely.
You know, they
Right.
go, right, they go to school and they have their 7 8 classes, whatever. They come back and they go for tuitions, and you have
Mm-hmm.
these competitive exams, and
Mm-hmm.
you see, competition and learning don't really go hand in hand.
Right.
If you wish to learn, you have to stop competing.
Mm.
You will find that all across the world, the universities or institutions that have made a name for themselves because of learning with the unique way in which they think,
Mm-hmm.
those institutions have done away with marks, or they do
Mm-hmm.
have assessments. I'm not saying don't have exams, don't have assessments. Of course, you need to
Mm-hmm.
have some sort of a marking. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
how will one child go from one class to another?
Right.
Right. Or join a particular course.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All right. But let the child get that opportunity to discover what he
Wow.
or
Right.
she actually loves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm a teacher myself. I have
Mm-hmm.
students who are equally good in mathematics and art.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Right.
But but the child's passion may be art.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but even when it's coming to joining a college, that child has to sit for a competitive exam.
Mm.
So you realize, Ankit, how very different it is from Shantiniketan.
Right.
It's like, Shantiniketan is like giving wings to the child to fly, go explore the whole world is yours.
Mm-hmm.
And here we
Mm-hmm.
are just clipping off the wings at the very start.
Mm-hmm.
And we are
Right.
judging the child on the basis of the marks she's getting in the board exams or the entrance exam. And then we are telling the child, okay, you can you can pursue a course in arts or in
Right.
art, as in drawing and painting in our college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really sad.
Mm. Like Einstein said, judging a fish by how beautifully it can climb the tree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Tagore realized that, the fish will flourish in water, the bird is
Mm-hmm.
going to in the sky. And he
Mm-hmm.
gave that room, that space.
Mm-hmm.
Today, our children don't have that breathing space.
Right. For sure, I agree, I would like to quote this, closed classrooms close the heart of students. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 200%.
Right. This is amazing,
And
we
the
need more. Yeah, continue, please.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ankit. And we are teaching them how to be competitive. That's not a good thing in the long run.
For sure, for sure.
It's good to be ambitious, it's good to have
Uh-huh.
your goals. But when
Uh-huh.
competition becomes unhealthy, which is becoming so unhealthy because of these, percentiles and all, these things, then, it affects the growth of the future generation.
For sure, for sure. I can agree because, at my age, every second person you meet, the question is, what competition are you preparing for? That has become the norm now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely need more Shantiniketans in this world now.
Tagore had himself walked out of the structured education system. He was
Hmm.
enrolled in
Did he?
college. Yeah, yeah. He went to college only for one day. And he is
Okay.
they were very rich, so his father had sent him to England to
Okay.
study in high school. And
Uh-huh.
then he was enrolled in law, but he would bunk
Uh-huh.
college and go and watch Shakespearean theatre.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So his, academically, he was not inclined to classroom teaching at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what happens with creative minds. Ankit, you don't really like to walk the beaten track. You just like to
Right.
explore it on your own. But our
Uh-huh.
education system will not allow you to do that.
Definitely, definitely. I hope this podcast does not reach to my teachers, but I'll say you this. One day I etched with a compass on the bench of my classroom that assignments kill the creativity because I was very fed up of the assignments. I was not being able to do podcasts. I was not being able to do storytelling.
Absolutely, Ankit. Whenever I used to call my son, he would say, I am busy, I am typing my assignment. So
Right.
he was practically married to his laptop.
Right.
Right. And when they go for internships, when, it came to actually seeing how law is practiced,
Mm-hmm.
it's very different.
For sure. Right.
Right. What do you need? Like I was talking about this student of mine who's very brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
She is such a brilliant painter. My student, she's waiting for all her results. But Ankit, if you see her painting, I organize exhibitions, and she had put up a stall, in 2023, and she was completely sold out. And and that time she was in class 11.
Wow.
People who had come, they were not believing that she was in class 11. Somebody even asked that, is it a printout?
Oh, wow. Must have been exceptional.
She is exceptional, but you see, in order to be a painter, she will need a degree. At least she feels that she need a degree. Although I don't really
Mm-hmm.
feel that way because see, do I have a degree in writing? No. All you need
Mm-hmm.
is a pen and paper. For painting,
Mm-hmm.
you
And a
need a
heart.
paintbrush and a canvas.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You
Definitely.
see, so these are things that our education system will never understand. And that is why
Mm.
we are moving towards a very robotic existence where nowadays children don't have friends. They only have
Right?
classmates. They don't have friends.
They have AI.
They have AI. I ask my students to write compositions. They bring it done, with the help of artificial intelligence. And they think that their teacher does not have the intelligence to find out. Really annoys me.
So, are you liking the transition, Because, so how long have you been doing the teaching?
Oh, teaching I've been doing for a good 26 years now.
Oh my God, almost 3 decades now.
Almost, yes.
So there is this transition, no? Before people used to write what came to them, what they learned, did not take the help of AI, and now there are other batch of students that they are taking not taking the help of AI. They are doing everything with AI. What is the difference?
There is a huge difference. There is a huge difference, because imagination is completely dead.
I agree.
Yes, see, I teach ICSE and ISC mainly. So, you have these compositions where you ask them, you've been to a new
Hmm.
holiday destination, just describe what
Right.
you have seen. Now, this particular child has traveled.
Hmm.
Instead of, I am telling him that, why don't you just close your eyes and try to remember what you have seen, heard,
Hmm.
eaten, local language, local clothes, food, people.
Hmm.
But if he has AI and he can just copy things down, he
Hmm.
will not give that time, he won't devote that time for writing. And you know
Hmm.
what this is leading to, Ankit? I'm telling you that in school they get the C plus grade or C plus B,
Hmm.
and then in the final ICSE or ISC, I don't know what's happening. Everyone's getting a 99%.
Right.
This is frightening because I have taught this child and I know that I have been an examiner myself, ICSE examiner. I know how
Hmm.
the marking is done. I know that for this child, I wouldn't have given him a more than 14 out of 20.
Okay.
Right, so how is he securing that 95 in English?
Uh-huh.
Something is grossly wrong somewhere. I mean, we'll never get to know, I guess.
Today English is that subject you take it for granted. Be it English or Hindi, any language. Okay, people will study it one day before the exam, and they will still get 95, 96, 99 even.
Absolutely. Marks have become so cheap, that,
Wow, strong statement.
yes. And like, you tell me something that, when we were young and, getting a first division in those days was a very big thing.
Hmm.
Getting an 80% was a big thing. You became the local celebrity in your neighborhood.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
would come with gifts and sweets and all that. Today, if I had to distribute sweets to my friends or relatives' children, I would have to visit the entire neighborhood.
Hmm.
So no real
Right.
stars are born.
Right. Right. So let's come back to Tagore for
Yeah.
a bit.
Sure.
Just one question, and then we can continue our chit chat.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, so we have done enough of a discussion for the people to digest because it's not usual to get so much information, okay, especially on Tagore. So they need some time to digest that. For sure, we'll be having more discussions in future, many more podcasts to come with this amazing author. Okay, so one last question to end the conversation for today. Can we blame the youth of today, who we call Gen Z, and Gen Alpha is coming very soon, for not reading Tagore? People are not reading Tagore as much as they should, I feel. Or have we failed to make them relevant? So I'll repeat the
Well,
question
I
again.
yeah.
Are they not reading Tagore, or is it our fault for making him less relevant?
Yes, a lovely question, Ankit. And I think that this question actually presents the problem to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as authors, should look for solutions because I do not blame this generation at all.
Mm-hmm.
We have not
Okay.
presented to go to them. Perhaps, the way
Mm-hmm.
in which we should have
Mm-hmm.
in order to capture the interest.
Mm-hmm.
You see, my book here, The World of Tagore,
Mm-hmm.
it has 10 of his best known short stories, simple language, and we have
Mm-hmm.
some very beautiful illustrations. I'll just show you. Uh, it's illustrated.
Wow.
All right, very simple language, and it's a thin book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll tell you that I am teaching Tagore to children, and there
Okay.
is a yes, there is a bit of Tagore in the ICSE syllabus and the ISC syllabus. All
Mm-hmm.
right, but beyond that, if you are asking them to do a reference reading,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be guided.
Okay.
All right, because we must understand that Tagore is in Bengali.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bengali of his times has changed completely.
Okay.
Our children, most of our children, have learned Bengali as a second language in school, whereas
Right.
we had Bengali as our first language. For us, it
Mm-hmm.
was very
Okay.
easy to interpret that kind of Bengali. But how will our
Okay.
children interpret?
Mm-hmm.
So, now if that child is not able to read the original collection of short stories
Mm-hmm.
or his poems
Mm-hmm.
or any other prose or poetry of Tagore, we need to simplify them.
Okay.
If the child does not know Bengali at all, if he knows Bengali, he will be able to read, uh, the Bengali versions if they are written, rather rewritten
Mm-hmm.
in contemporary
Mm-hmm.
Bengali,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
But what if the child is not a Bengali?
Okay.
Such a child will not be able to read it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is our duty to make it simple, relatable, a bit of fun, a bit of exploring for children,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? Right. So we have to move with the times, we have to change,
Mm-hmm.
right? Without distorting things.
Wow. Very
That part is
important.
very
Very
important.
important.
Very
Right.
important. Because
Mm-hmm.
you cannot do it to Tagore, you cannot do it to any author.
Right.
You cannot play around with original work.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so at least give children the kind of literature that they are used to reading. They are used to
Mm-hmm.
reading a lot of American literature.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not saying that write in the way they write, the American
Okay.
contemporary writers write. That will not be possible with Tagore at all.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Mm-hmm.
Tagore will lose the flavor,
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But these are children who are like
Mm-hmm.
sponges. They will absorb anything that you give them.
Mm-hmm.
So give them something rich,
Mm-hmm.
right? Make the language rich. Let the emotions flow because they are human children. They will, relate to the characters.
Right.
Right. Who are these characters? These are characters, young children who are going to school. A young
Mm-hmm.
girl, a village girl who runs around, she's a tomboy. Then there is a boy who does not like to get entangled in any kind of relationships. So don't
Mm-hmm.
we have them amongst our children? We do.
Definitely. Right.
And why won't they read it, Ankit? They will read
Mm-hmm.
it. provided
Right.
they find it in simple language, interesting language. Nowadays children like fast paced
Mm,
series and
mhm,
books. They
mhm,
have too much of audio visual.
mhm,
So put in illustrations,
mhm,
right? Make the pace a little faster.
mhm,
Let the stories, not be too long drawn out, and
mhm,
give them a little bit at a time. Like, in my book, it's 10 stories.
mhm,
Introduce them to these stories, to the author, little bit at a time. And I'm
mhm.
sure that a certain amount of interest among a certain group of children is definitely going to form. It's only a
Wow,
matter of time and effort.
yeah, I completely agree. At least they deserve a chance to explore the world of Tagore, and then it's up to them to like it or not like it.
Absolutely.
Right, right. And again, it is the job of the authors and storytellers to keep people like Tagore alive for generations and generations.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, it's our responsibility. Authors, teachers, parents, elders in the family, just like, in many families across India, Ramayana and Mahabharata is read out by
Mm-hmm,
grandparents.
mm-hmm.
We can do the same with Tagore.
Right, right. So, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you so much for writing about Tagore. It was lovely talking to you. Looking forward to many, many, many more conversations.
Thank you so much, Ankit, for having me here. It has been a sheer pleasure to know you and to communicate with you. Thank you so much for giving me this platform. And yes, of course, we look forward to many more podcasts together.
Right. Next podcast is an offline one.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for the
much.
day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'll
Thank
press
you.
the end recording and then maybe we can talk for a minute or two and then we can end it.